Hello, welcome, dear learners, to this course on climate change and literature. It is a course that connects climate and literature. Literature is about human existence, thought, and traditions, and it has a deep connection with nature. In fact, climate or nature has always been a part of literature in different parts of the world, in the forms of stories, drama, and song. And in this course, we will study how climate and literature genres are connected and how climate change is expressed through literature. The relationship between the two is extremely important because we need urgent ways to address climate change, and such ways cannot be done through science, cannot be done through economics, subjects that the layman will never think of reading. It's literature, it's drama, it's theater, it's poetry that give us entertainment, and along with entertainment they give a moral message. So that's why it is important that we link climate change and literature together. We will study the different facets of climate change and how literature reflects them. The course will enlighten us as to how literature can be a medium to mitigate the impacts of climate change. So it's going to go into great detail about what climate change is and how it is reflected in different forms of literature, in novel, poetry, drama, etc. And I hope to make it interesting for you all. Hope you enjoy this interesting interdisciplinary connection between science and between humanities. To begin with, let's talk about the state of the world today. Humans have centered themselves in the universe, and nature has been sidelined. And this has been happening more since the Industrial Revolution, where nature became something that had to be plundered, that had to be used, that had to be sort of become a means of benefit for human beings. So think about the wood, the coal, the fossil fuels, oil, all those things that went into industry, and all those things that came from nature. And definitely, nature is something that we cannot do without. We have been exploiting nature, and we have been using nature for all our comforts, for all our commercial purposes. Think of just one thing in today's world which you do not derive from nature. You need the things from the sea, you need things from the hills, you need things from the earth, you need the air to breathe, you need the sunshine. So nature is so crucial for our existence, and yet we have not understood that it is important, and it is important that we also take care of that nature that is a mother to all of us. And this is called the Anthropocene age, where man is at the center and nature is on the side. Nature is the slave, nature is the victim, as seen in 17th century literature, or even if we talk about Anglo-Saxon literature. Worshipping nature or giving nature a sanctity was pagan worship. So we see there was a utility in those ancient rites. They gave nature an importance, they gave nature sanctity, and now we know that this relationship between humans is skewed, between humans and nature, it's skewed. And how do we know? We know because the devastating extreme climate effects. We know because they are tsunamis that have wreaked havoc. Thousands of lives have gone. There has been rampant destruction. There have been mass migrations because of droughts. There have been floods. There have been tidal waves. There have been landslides in places of pilgrimage. So these events are actually unholy events, and these are extreme climate events. And there's this picture that you can see, which gives a terrifying picture of a forest on fire. Now we know that forest fires, they are there in nature. They happen according to nature when the forests are dry, and they, in due course of times, the forest also subsides and new vegetation comes up. But these are not caused by nature. Such forest fires are caused by human beings because there is something called global warming. Because of the heat, the forests are being heated up, and that's why it's easy for them to catch fire. So, this is just one example, and there is a terrible loss of vegetation here, and there are some issues that we can just discuss as an example here. There were forest fires in Australia in the recent years, forest fires in UK. So, well, the forest burnt up. They made the areas around very hot. Um, UK is a is a place that in Shakespearean poetry has been celebrated for its pleasant summer temperatures, which are like springtime over here. But that time it was UK was heating up, and there was another side to this, that there were houses that were built on the peripheries of these forests. These houses were built illegally in spite of the warnings of experts that there could be climate events at any time which could harm them. They were not obeyed. So you can see human beings using up as much space as they want and not following the hints that are given to them by experts in these areas of archaeology or nature. So those houses also got burned. People lost their properties, people even lost their lives. And I remember seeing in the newspapers uh, the beaches, the pictures of beaches where, which were clogged with human, people with faces which looked so unsightly. Everybody wanted to cool off in the waters. So this is the effect of, going against nature and following the path of commercialization and following an existence of total profit and neglecting nature. Nature today is no longer sacred. Let us talk about the ancient traditions and the tribal religions. Nature was worshipped. Nature was in a state of sanctity. Whenever anything was taken from nature, whenever there was a crop, or whenever there were trees that were giving crops or fruit, they were thanked for it. And a recompense was made for all that. Trees were worshipped, which, as I said, in Anglo Saxon times uh, was termed as pagan worship. Anything that was not Christian in the 11th century was pagan worship. But there was a good side to it, giving plants a place of respect and reverence, giving trees, giving water, giving the sun a place of reverence and respect, kept the balance of nature, kept a balance in the ecosystem. What is the state today? Today, human beings think of nature in terms of utility. Nobody thinks of any worship or reverence. It's a kind of non living thing which must be used. The trees must be felled, the river water must be used, the fish must be taken from the rivers and seas and processed for feeding. And whatever treasures that the ocean has, they must be used unendingly till the ocean runs out. So, this is our attitude today. And what was the attitude in ancient times? These were gifts of nature, and nature was thanked for them. So, think about any ancient tribal community. It was the Indians in Asia, or if you think about the Chinese, or you think about the local Indians in North America or South America, or you think about the Canadian local Indians. It was all the same. They used nature, but they did not abuse nature. They went and lived according to the cycles of nature. So let's have a look at this video.
Living in harmony with the nature, it's mean respecting each species of the nature. You respect the trees, you respect the birds, you respect the insect, you respect the animals whilst there, and you respect even the water who is there, who is feeding you and feeding the same trees. So living in harmony with nature, it's mean you do not extract from the nature. You take only what you need and you give back to the nature what you take. As indigenous peoples, we say, we are not different than the rest of the species. We are only one species of the nature. So we cannot harm the rest of them. So that's why living in harmony, it's connecting each other, respecting each other, and trying to keep the balance without harming the rest of the species of the nature. From the centuries and centuries, my great-parents are always using the ecosystem. So they knowing from the ecosystem, they move from one place to another one to find water and pastures. But in this way of living, it is giving back to the nature. It is helping the nature to get regenerated in a natural way. So all the indigenous peoples around the world, this is the deeper connection we have. And that's also why we are protecting the 80% of the world's biodiversity. Because for us, it is not a passion or a job. It is our way of living. And that's what we have for all the generations. Firstly, we are very happy that now from the private sectors to the public to UN agencies, all peoples are saying how important are indigenous peoples and their role to protect the biodiversity, but to fight climate change. They are finally recognized that indigenous peoples are a solution. We are not only a victim of the climate change. When we talk about the nature, when we talk about the climate, most of the time people talk a lot, but they do not act. Maybe it is difficult for them to find the way to act. And this is where the role of indigenous peoples are in the center of each discussions. Because we are not only talking, we are acting. So we want the peoples who are talking to follow us and act. If we act since all those years, we cannot be in this pathway of the climate impact every single day. Imagine when you come in country like mine in Chad. In the north, you have the desert 100%. You come a little bit down, you have the Sahel regions. You go a little bit further, you have the savanna. And after the savanna, you have the tropical forests. What is happening with the climate change? The desertification advance. The people from the desert move to the Sahel. The people from the Sahel move to the savannas. Those from savannas move to the tropical forests. And that's also how the peoples are using the ecosystem that exists. So you cannot choose to protect only the tropical forest when you pledge a money. You must think about all the rest of the ecosystem that interconnected, from the oceans to the glaciers. Around the world, we are facing a lot of crises. Of course, from the environment to the health and to the war. But when we think the impact of all that, it is based on the human survival and planet survival. So we must all act to fight climate change and protect the world from the harm that is coming from every corner of the world. It could be food security, it could be water, it could be biodiversity, it could be human insecurity, but all is related to the climate change. So we can't be sustainable if we cannot act.
So, as the video showed us, there is a relevance of all this climate activism in relation to the climate events that are taking place today. And we already know that it's the tribal regions that have the wisdom and they have a harmonious relationship with nature. We have a lot to learn from them. So this video really shows that the wisdom, the love and the support for nature can come from tribal knowledge, can come from ancient systems, ancient religions. We really need to have a healing attitude towards nature. This is what that video is about. I hope, uh, dear learners, you can get some tips from this about the importance of climate change, about the urgency of climate change, and the urgency to take steps to reduce its impacts. A reflection of climate change in literature. There are many books on climate change. Many books. They are non-fiction books. They are fiction books also. But in my mind, there are some outstanding books that to have read them, one never forgets them, which really give you everything in a nutshell, which give you the heart and soul of the matter of nature and the relationship with human beings. One of those books is Amitav Ghosh's book, The Great Derangement. In this, he mentions the important relationship between humans and nature. And to begin with, he talks about his coming face to face with a tornado. And he seemed to see that the tornado had an eye, and that eye seemed to be following him. So, to begin with, he gives us the idea that nature is living, nature is not dead, there's a living pulse in nature, and it is following us. And all the climate events that are taking place are representing the fury of nature, which we cannot escape because we have started this by plundering nature. This extreme nature of climate events like tsunamis, earthquakes, forest fires, floods, etc., they all reveal the fury of nature that has long withstood our mistreatment. This is how climate change is represented, and this is how climate is changing and forcing us to reflect in our books, movies, dramas, and arts. So, The Great Derangement is a very important book, and it gives you also a list of books. Actually, Ghosh, in writing this book, wanted the readers to understand that this relationship between man and nature has not got much consideration. he saw that the relationship between climate and literature had not been worked upon too much. So he, I suppose, is the first person in the world to have come out with a work in which he talks about the books that discuss climate change and encourages more writing on climate change, so that we may be able to discuss and address climate concerns. So, to go back to the very beginning, what is climate change? We have been talking about it constantly. The video in which we saw this person from tribal Africa, she also talks about climate change. Simply, it is a change of climate. But if we tend to think of this in the terms of age, somebody who is in the 20s and 30s today could not have known what the weather was in the, let's say, in the 60s. So if a very old person might tell you, oh, at that time it used to be, summers used to be like this, they were temperate. To this time, summers are very hot, that old person will tell you. So we cannot rely on this by hearsay. We have to go to scientific reports to learn about the change in climate patterns. And there have been significant changes in global temperatures and weather patterns over the time. And this has come to us through scientific research, through experiments. And here, the most important thing in climate change is the greenhouse gases. Now, these are the gases in the atmosphere which are responsible for warming the earth. But understandably, human activity, industries, human burning fossil fuels like oil and coal has increased the level of these gases, and therefore, from being uh, tools to warm up the earth, now these gases are heating up the earth and they are causing global warming. So this is what global warming is about. When these gases are in excess, we'll go into these in detail in a little while. So there are various causes that we'll discuss, various questions that we'll try to answer, and we'll also think about, well, how do the scientists know that this gas is too much in the atmosphere? So the thing is that the change of climate has always been there. Our earth has alternated between warm climates and ice ages through trillions of years. So the present age that we are going through would in the next 1000 years have gone to an ice age. But the amount of heat that is being generated by human activity is going to delay that ice age. So human activities are the prime drivers of climate change in the 20th century. It's the industrial revolution, the burning of fossil fuels that are responsible for the release of these gases in the air, and their abnormal increase which has led to global warming. We will go into some more detail on which these gases are, and before going into that, we should also know there's a layer of air in the atmosphere which is called the ozone layer. It is the protective layer which protects human beings and other life on earth from the ultraviolet rays of the sun. The direct exposure to such rays leads to cancer and other deadly diseases. So the ozone layer protects, and uh, the thing is that even the ozone layer is thinning because of the increasing, the increasing gases in the air. So these are the greenhouse gases. They are also known as GHGs, carbon dioxide, CO2, methane, CH4, and nitrous oxide. So these are the main gases released by industries and through smoke, through air pollution, and through various other factors which we'll discuss later on. And these gases, along with water vapor, are responsible for warming the earth. And interestingly enough, the way the earth uh, warmed up uh, in the last 4,000 years, the level of carbon dioxide that was there in the 4,000 years, that was slow. We have sort of got the 4,000 year amount of carbon in just 200 years, which is actually frightening. In 200 years, we have done what nature was doing slowly. And so we are going to reverse a lot of patterns of weather on the earth. We know that the weather consists of rain and the ocean currents and the amount of sunshine. Everything is going to have a shift and a change, and that is going to be detrimental to human life as well as to other non-human life on this earth. So, what are the primary causes of global warming? There are just too many to be mentioned. The first is of the burning of fossil fuels, coal, oil, natural gas, and burning them releases carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. Now the thing is that these fossil fuels have been under the earth and created under the earth, formed by the earth for millions of years. And what are we doing? In about 200-300 years, we are going to finish all the fossil reserves under the earth. And then what is going to happen? So we are in a kind of terrible situation, running out of all those fuels and poisoning the air with excessive burning of those fuels. We will see other outcomes a little later. Now we have something called deforestation also. Trees, they absorb carbon dioxide, and cutting them down reduces this ability to absorb carbon dioxide. So we are doing destruction on many levels. We are leaving poisons in the air. We are cutting down all those systems that would sort of have a healing effect, that would reduce that absorption of carbon dioxide. We are cutting down those trees. And we cut down the trees, we are disturbing the habitats of animals, we are disturbing biodiversity, we are upsetting the ecosystem, because we know there's a unique balance in nature between the trees and the plants and the microbes, the mushrooms, all kinds of living and non-living forms. So when we drastically cut down one living form, there's a gap and there is a clash. So these burning of fossil fuels and deforestation, these are just two words, but they mean so much. If you see that the destruction of trees happens in layer by layer, it's like a pack of cards. One card topples, then another, it's continuous toppling and creating very grave consequences for human beings. So thank you. We will go on to the next lesson after a short while. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope I was able to make the idea of climate change clear to you. So let's meet again in the next lesson.